that there is such a place as purgatory, and I believe that the people who are going to go there are professors who assign busy work. Amen? Yeah, and I don't want to go there, so I want to make sure you understand that these atlases are not busy work, because if you don't know what I'm about to tell you, you might be going through some of the assignments and say, why is he making us do this? Well, let me explain to you why this is such an important thing to do, all right? So I'm going to put a verse up here on the board, on the screen, Judges 16:1. And I want you just to look at it very quickly and tell me what shocks you about it. That is, what's the bad word? Tell me what the bad word is that shows up here in Judges 16:1. Obviously, the bad word is, we can't even say it. Yes, it's prostitute. That's a bad word, right? Now, here's the reason why we're going to do this exercise. Because the original people who read this would think that prostitute was sort of a bad word, but not the worst word up there on the screen. You know what the worst word, the foul word, the word that you probably tried not to say? It was Gaza, right? And that says more to them about prostitute. They wouldn't say, he went to a prostitute, that's bad. Well, they would, but they say, he went to one in Gaza? Seriously? Right? And that informs what this story is about. And it goes on and says this, he got up and took hold of the doors of the post and the city gate, and he lifted them right out of the ground, and he carried them to Hebron. And again, the word which would amaze them is not that he ripped them out, but that he carried them all the way to Hebron. That's what they would say. It's, no, you're kidding me. Come on. This is an unbelievable story. He couldn't have taken them to Hebron, right? Now, those things don't occur to us because we don't know the geography, right? But they should. The writer assumes you know that. In the very same way that when we look up here at prostitute, the writer does not have to add a little editorial comment and say, by the way, this is bad, right? This is really, really bad. Because all the readers, and we understand it, right? We've read the Ten Commandments, so we get that, right? But what we don't have is the geographical understanding that makes the text make sense. For example, he could have easily said, you know, Gaza, that's really deep in Philistine territory where the judge of Israel should not be, okay? Or down here, the hill that faces Hebron. And you realize that's 40 miles away and almost a mile up. And then you start to say, well, wait a minute, wait, hold on. That's unbelievable. Something else is going on here. He's not just a strong guy. There's something going on in the power of the Spirit. And if he has the power of the Spirit to carry the thing all the way to Hebron, then why didn't he have the power of the Spirit to say no to the prostitute 6 hours earlier? Right? And it's only when you get to that level you're starting to ask the questions the text wants you to get at, and then all of a sudden these things become much more than just flannel graph stories. All right? So that's why we're going to study geography, because you have to know that in order to make sense of what's going on in the text. Let me show you where Gaza is down here. Gaza, of course, is down here where it is still today in the Gaza Strip, if you read your international news, right? Way down here on the plain, and then, of course, Hebron is up here 3,300 feet high, and we put this in take a page out of the satellite atlas. We go from sea level all the way up here to Hebron to carry that gate 40 miles east and 3,300 feet up, right? So when you look at this, you realize, okay, now wait a minute. If this is true, then Samson didn't just look like this. Oh, this is the way we like to portray him. You know, this beautiful six-pack there, looks really good. Or maybe a tough guy like this, or a really tough guy like this, you know, just muscles ripping out everywhere. And begin to realize, no, wait, 40 miles, none of these guys could have done this 40 miles. That's way too far. There's something far beyond physical strength. And I would argue that given the realities of the text and the geography and all that sort of stuff, that it's probably far more likely that Samson really looked like this guy than he did the others. I'm serious about this, because it was the Spirit of God who did it, not his own strength at all. Right? And that becomes really, really important to understanding what's really going on in the story. So that's why we're going to take a look at geography. So here's the point of the exercise. It's designed as an exercise in observation to help you learn the geography of Israel. It's the only way I can do this is to say, okay, let's observe what's going on. Let's take a look at the map. Let the map get absorbed into your head. The point is not to stress you out, right? These are not quizzes. You don't have to look and memorize something. Not going to stress you out. It's an open book kind of worksheet deal. The question is not difficult. Number two, nor are they timed. You can take as much time as you need. And number three, they do force you to observe and hunt. So I'm going to say things like this. How far is it from Bethlehem to Beersheba? And you have to find those two on there. And you might say, well, when am I ever going to have to know the answer to this? Well, probably never, but in order to answer it, you're going to have to find Bethlehem and find Beersheba and see the relationship in the map, and pretty soon it's going to get not buried, it's going to get emblazoned on your mind, okay? So think of it as a Where's Waldo, but with a point. That's kind of what we're going to do. Right? So the atlas itself, notice this, that 99% of the maps are oriented to the east. Can I steal your atlas for a second here? As you open it up, everybody gets yours out and open them up to the very front page. If you look at this front cover, this is about the only map in the book that actually has north to the top. Right? All the other maps, anywhere you open up here, to the top is east, and to the left is north. It works a lot better because Israel fits better in landscape mode like this, right? But that's important because if you start going from the bottom to the top, you are going from east to west, okay? So first thing to notice about them, all the maps are oriented to the east. Number two, there are 4 designations on the maps to look for. So there are basically 4 different kinds of maps here, and I'll show them to you. I'll show them to you, and then I will demonstrate it to you, okay? So first of all, 2 of them are about time. You're going to see some maps that say period A, which means Old Testament, some that say period B, which means New Testament. Then you're going to see 2 about topography. And LT means layer tent, color indicates the elevation, and S means just straight satellite, no color added, so you can see the terrain just like it looks. So let me illustrate these then. First of all, turn to page 26, if you will, and in your atlas. And as you will see, north is to the left. Notice also up here it says map 1 LT, which again means layer tent, so we've added some color to get the elevation. And then also it says LTA, which means Old Testament, so the cities are orange. And you're going to find cities along here like Joppa, where Jonah went to, or Gath, where Goliath was from. Some very old, or Jezreel, some very Old Testament sounding names, right? But then let's skip to page 36, 10 more pages. Go to page 36 and notice a completely different kind of map. This one says map S, which means it's just a straight satellite. So whatever colors you see on there are not enhanced. So if you see the white stuff up here, that's actually snow, and obviously the Sea of Galilee is blue, and then you can see some rocky areas and a little bit of green area here in the valley of Megiddo. And then also it says B, which basically means New Testament, and most of the cities are yellow. Right? So these are cities that you recognize from the New Testament. Whoops, too far there. Tiberias and Magdala and Chorazin and Capernaum and Bethsaida, those kind of things. Right? So you see the map S and LT, A and B, so you kind of know where you are. The only other thing you should know is this, that the grid lines are measured in kilometers. And the further you go in the book, as we get to the end of the book, the greater the zoom level of the maps and the grid lines become more frequent. So at the very beginning of the book, we're taking a look at the whole country, get the big picture. Then we start to zoom in on little spots as we move through. So look here on page 26 again, and notice the grid lines. These are in 20 kilometers right here, or you put 2 of them together, you get 40 kilometers there and 25 miles. And if we go to the top of that page, you'll see them up here, 200, 220, 240, 260. They start in the south and they move to the north, right? So you can tell where you are. You can also, if you look at it carefully, you can see the Sea of Galilee is probably about 20 kilometers long, right? So in miles, that would make it how long? About 12 or 13 miles long. Yep. Okay. Then let's go here. Let's go to page 128 towards the back of the book. And you get to page 128 and notice the kilometers up here, right? These are now, it's 240 and 250. Now we've got just 10K in between the grid lines. So you're really zoomed in. And this used to be a really cool atlas before Google Maps came along, and then now it's just kind of ordinary, but still really worthwhile. Still really worthwhile because you can even see the Jordan River here and the silt flowing into the Sea of Galilee there. You can see the buildings around and a little bit of the topography. right over in here. See these little cliffs coming down here? These little cliffs? This is where Jesus put the demons into the pigs, and they ran down those cliffs into that water and drowned. Okay? So you can see even some of that topography there. So let me just show you a couple of other interesting things here. I'm on page 72. This is Mount Hermon, way up in the north. And you can see again, this is technically a satellite picture, so all that white stuff there is just snow. A lot of snow falls here, flows down into the Hula Valley where the Jordan River is, and that's where a lot of the snow comes to irrigate the land. By far the highest point in Israel, Mount Hermon. Other than that, it's about 3,000 feet high in Hebron, something like that. Page 73, we're here at the Sea of Galilee, and you can see even now some of the farmers' fields in here, right, because it's fairly fertile in there. Notice the Sea of Galilee says -692. That means it's 692 feet below sea level. That's important because below sea level, the elevation indicates a whole lot about temperature, and the lower you go, the warmer it gets. So it's pretty warm here. And in fact, if you dug a canal between the Mediterranean, which is just like 30 miles to the west, it would overwhelm and flood this whole area. So the Sea of Galilee is already 700 feet below sea level. The Jordan River flows downhill to the Dead Sea, and the Dead Sea ends up being 1,348 feet below sea level. By far the lowest place on Earth. The closest I think we come in the States is Death Valley, which is like 200 feet below sea level. So this is really, really far down, which again makes all sorts of important differences. And the first difference is this. If you just go 13 miles to the west from the Dead Sea, you go up to Jerusalem, which is 2,700 feet high. So that's a difference of 4,000 feet, which is basically a difference of about 40 degrees. So, and all the time, winter or summer. So that means in the wintertime, it can be 30 degrees and snowing up in Jerusalem and 70 degrees and sunny down here at the Dead Sea. That's why Herod had a winter palace down here. It's kind of like going to Florida for the wintertime, except you just have to go 13 miles to the east, right? It's also why on the shores here of the Dead Sea were found the Dead Sea Scrolls, which lasted, copies of the Old Testament, which lasted for 2,000 years, far beyond any of the copies we ever had. Why? Because it's dry and hot, and those kind of things last and don't mold and all that sort of stuff. You also might notice this if you don't do it now, but if you look in your Bible and you see a picture of the Dead Sea, you see this little peninsula sticking out from the right-hand side into the Dead Sea. Well, today that peninsula goes all the way across. And the reason is because the Dead Sea keeps getting deader and deader, lower and lower. There's no exit from it. It just evaporates out. But because the Israelis have siphoned off a lot of the water from the Jordan, there's not as much going in, and so it's getting lower and lower and lower, which means it's denser and more salt in it than ever before. 3 or 4 times what Salt Lake is. If you've ever been to Salt Lake City. And what makes it cool is that you can float in it easily. You can lay on your back, and if you put your head down in the water, it only goes about this far down because it's so incredibly dense. You really can go to sleep sitting on top of the water in the Dead Sea. There are all sorts of resorts along the Dead Sea here, and a couple years ago while I was there, a little kid was swimming in the Dead Sea, and the winds blew him out. Mom and Dad didn't know it. Right? He's out in the middle of the Dead Sea, and everybody sort of panicked. Not that he's going to drown, because you can't drown, but they're afraid the kid's going to dehydrate before they find him. About 18 hours later, they found him. Kid was fine, a little dried out, but he was, floating in the middle of that thing. No fish in the Dead Sea, way too toxic for anything like that. But you can see down here they've got some beds that are drying out and deliberately harvesting potash and minerals and stuff from the Dead Sea. So, that's all I want to tell you about that. Let me show you about this one. Look on page 44. And at the head of every major section, there are about 7 of them in here, you'll find a series of pictures that try to show you from ground level, or at least close up, what the region looks like. And up here in the top left, top left, up here, you have sort of a legend. So you notice the numbers here, 1, 2, I don't know where 3 went to, but 4, 5, 6, and 7. And what it's trying to say is, to give you a sense of what this area looks like, picture number 1 is going to be in this spot looking in this direction. And so sure enough, here it is down here, 3.1. you can see the mountains in the distance, and that's what these are right here, right? So this is picture number 1. So that's picture number 1. Can you guess what picture number 6 is going to look like? Right? I mean, all you do is look at it. It's going to be right there, looking at the coast, the Mediterranean on the west and the land on the east. So let me talk to you then about the rules of the game, taking the quizzes, okay, doing the worksheets. Number 1, they're called Atlas worksheets, 1 through 8. You have 2 tries at each worksheet, and the program selects the higher grade of the 2. Everyone should get full credit if you're at least 3/4 conscious. We have done studies, okay? If you're 3/4 conscious, you ought to do well. This is not a hard thing at all. All you have to do is just, you get as much time as you want, you just look, you figure it out, and I expect that you will get 100%, right? I hope you do. I mean, there's no reason not to. Everybody here should get 100%. Did I explain to you about the grades and the exams in this class? The exams are worth like 55% and everything else is worth like 45%. Sometimes the grades in the exams are a little lower because this other 45% of stuff, you're supposed to get 100% of it right, okay? There's no reason for you not to. So if you're 3/4 conscious, you should get full credit. There are 8 worksheets in all, and the first 4 are due by September 14th. I think that's true. That actually could be for the Tuesday, Thursday class. Ours might be September 13th or 15th. It's on the class schedule, though. Does anybody tell me what it is? The 13th? Okay, so the day before that, day before September 13th, they are due at 11:59. Now, this next part is really fairly important, okay? I want everybody to read this, and then we're going to recite it together. After that, you can't do the first 4 quizzes. Program won't let you in, no excuses, not even alien invasions, CEDARNet failures, or even Bay issues. Okay? You cannot come to me and say, oh, but my boyfriend, that's not going to work. Right? Do them early, don't wait till the last minute, okay? Let's all say it together. Do them early, don't wait till the last minute. And if you do, then don't call me and ask me to open this up, right? If I do it for one person, I have to do it for everybody. I'm not going to do it. It's there. Get it done on time, all right? So, procedures. Go to Moodle, week number 4. Choose Atlas worksheets 1, 2, 3, and 4. And if you want to take the stress out of your life, I'll show you that later. Right now, let's just go there. Let's go to week number 4. And let's give it a shot, okay? Atlas worksheet number 1. Should we do it together? All right, here we go. See if Moodle actually works. Would you like to attempt the quiz? Yes, please. Thank you. Okay, so, and every question is going to tell you what page to go to, right? You don't have to wonder, gee, where is he going in this atlas here? So open up to the inside front cover. And based on the inside front cover, the story of Esther occurs in Susa, the Persian capital. Is it north, south, east, or west of Babylon? So you've got to find Susa and you've got to find Babylon. So find Susa and find Babylon and tell me which way is it. Now, this is the only map that's oriented to the north. Right answer is east. You sure? Okay, I'm going to trust you. I'm going to trust you that Susa is east. Everybody see it? No? Well, then just think of where's Waldo. Get yourself your Diet Coke and some Doritos and just take time. Right? Number 2, inside front cover. Which is further north, Sinai, Gaza, or Jerusalem? So now you've got to find all 3 of those things. Right? What's the right answer? Jerusalem, yeah. Now, I hope you just see this. Look, there are a couple different ways you can do it. Number 1, and I know this is probably a terrible thing for me to say, but I'm going to say it anyway, all right? You can just kind of blow right through and try to figure out the right answer and get done with the assignment. Or you can sit and just kind of peruse the map and try to take in as much as you can. This is going to be a really, really helpful skill. And it's going to make one of the differences as you become a leader in your church 5 years from now about somebody who can read the text and know the hidden things down there that you're expected to know. So let it soak in. Just don't try to blow through it quickly. Just soak up as much as you can. One more. Inside front cover, Abraham went from Ur to Israel by way of Haran. What river did he most closely follow on this path? Oh, wow, that one's tough. I'm going to guess Nile, which is completely wrong, but that's enough. Okay, so you get the idea. I'm going to finish the attempt down here. Now notice what you have to do. It's Moodle, right? Which means it's bad software. So you have to finish the attempt, and then it tells me, are you sure you want to finish? You haven't done these. You want to return to the attempt? No, I want to submit all and finish. Are you sure? Yeah, I want to submit all and finish. Yeah, okay, I got my 20%. That's good. You got the first one right, got the second one right. Oops, wrong continent. Yeah, okay. I messed that one up. All right. So that's what you do. You go through there, and just another little hint here. We've been doing this for a lot of years. I mean, there are literally thousands of students have gone through these questions, and when you get one and you think, no, wait, the answer there is wrong. I got that one right. Chances are no, you didn't, right? You might have had the map turned one way or the other, right? Just so you know, don't try to put the same answer down a second time. It ain't going to work out if you get it wrong. Right? I think it will randomize the questions, so you may not get the same questions the next time, but it doesn't matter because you still should be able to get them all right. So if you get 10 the first time, that's cool. You can go on from there. All right? Any questions about the Moodle part here? Okay, and let's go back here. Choose Atlas Worksheets 1, 2, 3, and 4, and if you want to take the stress out of your life, do them this week, right? And if you want to show your love for Jesus, then do all 8, all right? That's bottom line. So get them done ahead of time so you don't have to worry about missing the assignment. All right? Yes? Amen? We good? Where's our attendance sheet today? Oh, good. Okay, so we're coming down. Good deal. All right, you guys are good. Okay, then let's go over and take a look at Joseph. And he's the study for today. And a quick review of Jacob. Very quick review of Jacob. Abraham seems redeemable, but why would God work with the likes of Jacob? And the answer is because God works with Abraham's and God works with Jacob's. Now, does my little chart here make sense to you? See what I'm trying to say? If you take a look at the episodes in his life, the first episode, the second episode, the third episode, I think there's a long time where Jacob is a blue character. I don't think he actually gets saved until that confessing of his name to the angel there at the Jabbok River. And when we say Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, very different kind of guys. But having said that, Joseph is a completely different kind of guy from those first two. When we talk about the God of, we say Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, right? But it's interesting that in the book of Genesis, we don't get equal emphasis on Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Abraham and Jacob, yes, but Isaac, no. Hardly anything about Isaac. And guess who takes his place? Joseph does, right? So we've got Abraham, we know what he's like. We got Jacob, we know what he's like. And now we're going to do Joseph, who's a completely different character. And not trying to be too provocative here, but I'm going to call Joseph the photoshopped patriarch. And I understand all of the connotations. Generally, that's a fairly negative connotation, right? At least Megan Trainor tells us so, right? We got to quit that stuff, and we talk about how bad this is to Photoshop. But in some sense, even with that negativity, I want to say here that there's a major analogy here between Photoshopping and what happens to Joseph. And it's the key to what the story is really all about. So stay with me, and you'll understand it by the time we are finished. Let's get started here really quickly with the very last section. There are 12 sections in the book of Genesis, and the very whole last section, 37 to 50, is focused on him. Like he gets more ink than almost anybody. Right? So God's word to Jacob's family results in Joseph's conflict with the evil one. I hope it kind of reminds you of something like this, because that's what we're going to see. And in his deliverance of his family for blessing. So as we start out, Joseph's position, the favorite of his father, separates him from the brothers. He has the dreams, tells his brother the dreams. Brothers get all jealous about the dreams and mad at him. And a lot of people look at the story of Joseph, look at the character of Joseph and say he's an arrogant young man because he's flaunting this stuff in front of his brothers. Well, if you read the story, he didn't make a coat of many colors, which probably meant a special coat or a coat of authority. He didn't make that. His dad gave it to him, number one. And number two, he doesn't make up these dreams about the wheat bowing down to him. Who gives him the dreams? God does, right? And I want to be careful before we think he's such an arrogant young man. I think he's just saying, man, guys, I had these dreams. What do they mean? Right? And so I asked the question, is Joseph to blame for his family situation? And I would argue, no, let's not blame him for this. God puts him in this position. Even though everybody's upset with him, it doesn't mean it's his fault. And this last dream that he has, the sun and the moon and the stars bow down to him. And he says, Dad, I don't know what this means. What's going on here? And his dad knows, and his dad's kind of upset, right? It's fairly obvious to him. And his dad says, do you think your mother and I are going to come and bow down to you? Right? And of course, his supposed answer is, well, no, we're not going to do that. You're just a kid, right? Right? But then notice what the text says. His brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept the matter in mind. I think it means this. When Jacob says to his son, do you think your mother and I are really going to come and bow down to you? He's kind of shaming his son a little bit and saying, no, we're not going to do that. But he's saying to himself, wow, could this really happen? Because does that turn out to be true? Absolutely, right? Not his mom, because his mom is dead. But if his mom were alive, his mother would be bowing down to him because he's second in charge of the entire world, basically, by the time the story ends. And it kind of reminds me of another young kid. I don't know if I'm stretching this too much, but can you think of another boy who kind of ticks his parents off a little bit? And his parents get upset with him and say, what are you doing? But his mom remembers the incident very well. I mean, think about this one. Didn't you know I had to be in my father's house? His mother kind of rebukes him. Look what you've done to your father and me. But his mother treasured all these things in her heart. Now, you might think this is a little bit artificial, but I'm telling you what, there are 35 more comparisons we're going to see, and pretty soon it starts to fit into a pattern. So, let's go on here very quickly to Genesis 37, the end of the chapter, and talk about two brothers who offer plans concerning little Joe. And let's get the brothers out here on the stage. Whoop, there they are. Okay. Two brothers offer plans. Who are they? Reuben, who is the oldest, and Judah, who is not the oldest, but who evidently has the most leadership skills because all the boys follow his plans, and it's his plan to sell him off. Okay, so they do that. I'm just going to leave that there for a second and then go on to one of the ugliest chapters in the entire Bible. Did you do your reading carefully enough? Chapter 38, right? Judah is the most influential leader, but chapter 38 is the story about the sin of Judah. And it's an ugly story of incest, and his daughter-in-law sleeps with him, and it's, he wants to kill her, and then they find out that he's the guy who actually slept with her and got her pregnant. It's like, oh my goodness, what's going on in this story? It's ugly. I don't care. No one's going to say, wow, I'm going to read that every morning for devotions. That just makes me feel so warm and fuzzy. And so, no, it's ugly. And you think, what in the world does this contribute to anything? Well, what it contributes is this. It's trying to show you what Judah is like, because what happens next is the story of what Joseph is like. And so I would say it's something like this. Look at the comparison between 38 and 39. Do you see the number? Oh man, it doesn't show up there very well, does it? I'm sorry. I put there's a big number up there. Oh, there he is. It's easier to see now, isn't it? See it? Right? I mean, I swear that number 39 is there in the same font, the same size, the same color, here, but it's hard to see. Yeah, it's better. Obviously, when your professor gets excited about these animations, you know something's going on here. Does this make sense to you? You see where I'm going with this? 39 is the story of Potiphar's wife and Joseph, famous story we all know. How can I sin against God by doing this thing? And the best part is, I think we had a chapel speaker, or maybe it was a Bible conference speaker, talked about it and said, she spoke to him day after day after day, and he said no every time. Right? So what it's demonstrating is that Joseph is a guy here of absolute moral purity. How does that compare with 38? Not so good. And just to make sure you see the purity of 39, we've got this background of 38, so you can say, take a look at these two stories. What is this all about? Well, I think it's about this. What does God value more highly in a leader? We saw in 37 that the brothers thought, ooh, leadership, that's it, right? Does he value leadership skills, the ability to speak in front of crowds? God says, I'm going to take purity. I'm going to choose this guy over that one, and this is the guy I'm going to use to bless the rest of the family and, in fact, the world, as we're going to find out. So let's get down there and watch how God uses him. And the first thing I want to show you is his providential rise to leadership. Now, when I say providential, do you know what I mean by that? I mean, obviously it's highlighted, it's bolded, it's italicized. Providential means what? It means that God does it, right? God brings him up. Now, why? Well, because of the story of the butcher, the baker, and the candlestick maker. Or no, a different story. The cupbearer and the baker. It's a fascinating story, I think, literarily. Just the beautiful way the story is told. Let me put it up here on the screen. Because he is in prison. It's all of chapter 40, right? He's in prison, and he says to one guy, because of your dream here, you're going to die. And he says to the other guy, you're going to live. He says to the one guy, you're going to live, and Pharaoh's going to lift you up. Right? And he says to the other guy, and you're going to die because Pharaoh's going to lift your head up off your body. So he says to the guy who's going to live, just do me one favor. When you get out and you see Pharaoh again, which I think it's the cupbearer who lives, he says to him, just tell Pharaoh I didn't do it. I don't deserve to be in here, and please let me out of prison because it's unjust. And I don't deserve this. Right? And so what does the cupbearer do? Cupbearer gets out of prison, goes to Pharaoh and says, hey, there's this amazing guy who told me these stories, predicted this, and he's there unjustly, right? Answer, the whole chapter tells us, and then it gets down to here to this. The chief cupbearer, however, he did not remember Joseph. He forgot him. Now, if I were the editor for Moses' book here, I'd say, Moses, sorry, man. I mean, it's already 50 chapters. It's way too big. We need to cut something out. And this chapter does not contribute anything to the storyline. Moses says, no, it does. Why? Because what he's trying to demonstrate is that if Joseph gets out of prison, if Joseph gets anywhere, why is it? Because of human help? And the answer is no. He has no humans who help him. He only has one person in the universe who helps him, and that is God. And if he's going to get anywhere, it's because God lifts him up, not because of what people say or do or vote for. All right? For example, if let's just pretend for a moment, if Jacob had been in prison, how would Jacob have gotten out of prison? Yeah, he would have bribed somebody, would have deceived somebody, he would have snuck his way out of prison, right? But not Joseph. He is pure. He doesn't do that. He asks, doesn't happen, and so, of course, he does get out of prison, but only because God gets him out. So, in this providential rise to leadership, I want you to notice three things. And I'm going to put the verses right up here, and you will see them. 41, verses 40 to 41 is the first thing I want you to see, and it's this. Pharaoh says, you will oversee my household, and all my people will submit to your commands. Only I, the king, will be greater than you. So he basically is second in command. Now, in Egypt, since Egypt is the United States of, 1500 BC, or 1800 BC, whenever this is, he's like basically second command of the entire world. Then notice this, chapter 41, verse 46. Joseph was 30 years old, and he began serving Pharaoh, king of Egypt. Second in command, 30 years old to start. It's starting to sound kind of familiar to me. What about 41:57? People from every country came to Joseph in Egypt to buy grain because the famine was severe throughout the earth. So he blesses his own nation, his own people, and all nations of the earth with bread. Golly, that's starting to sound familiar. I don't know. Does any got any ideas about who this could be talking about? I mean, I don't know if you can think of anything or not, but I'm starting to see some parallels here, right? And it gets even stronger as we go further. So look at this, where Joseph tests his brothers. Now, it's fascinating that this is the biggest chunk of the story. Actually, he makes them sweat bullets, right? Because he really puts them through it. I mean, the truth is, the first time he recognized his brothers, he could have just said, hey guys, I'm your little brother. Fancy meeting you here, right? But he doesn't do that. He has this big charade. He really puts them in the pressure cooker. Is he vengeful? And I wouldn't blame him if he were, but I don't think that he is. Is he just enjoying the charade and thinking, hey, I'm going to string this one out because it's giving me so much fun? Is he developing character? Sounds more spiritual, but I don't think that's even what he's doing. The key, I think, is this. What question has kept him awake at night for 20 years? Now, again, take Joseph off the flannel graph board for a second. Give him real heart and mind and emotions. Think today of victims of abuse, because that's exactly what it is. Your brothers take you and sell you into slavery and give you away to a foreign country. How does he go to sleep every night? The answer is he cries himself to sleep every night. You would too if your family trashed you and sent you away into slavery. And you would say, psychologically, it would mess with your psyche down as deep in your soul as it could go, and you would say to yourself, why am I such a piece of trash? Why am I so worthless? What did I do? Did I do something wrong? Why did they hate me? Why did my own family get rid of me? And even if you can say, okay, it's not about me, it was their problem, even then you want to know, gosh, do they still feel that way? So what does he want to do? Well, I think the question which he really wants to ask is, guys, are you sorry for doing this to me? Would you do it again? But he can't do that realistically, right? Because if he's standing in front of them, second in command of the entire universe, and he has, basically, and he has 50 bodyguards down this side of him and 50 bodyguards down this side of him, and they all have 6-foot gleaming razor-sharp swords, and they're looking at the brothers, and he says, hey guys, are you sorry for what you did to me? Well, what are they going to say to him? I mean, you see the picture? I mean, they can't say, oh, we've been meaning to get back to you. Yeah, as a matter of fact, we're sorry for what we did. Right? It's not a realistic picture, right? So what do you have to do? You can't just ask him. You can't just confront him. What do you have to do? You have to recreate the situation. But you don't have another Joseph, so what do you have? You have another son of Rachel, whom they're probably equally jealous of at this point. And so you put Benjamin in a situation of jeopardy to make them choose, will we sacrifice ourselves or will we sacrifice the other son of Rachel again? Right? And that's the whole point of the charade here. So that's why we use little Ben, and we do that, and that's why we put the silver cup in Ben's sack, and that's why when they find it in Ben's sack, everybody weeps and wails and thinks, oh my goodness, here we go, we're in trouble, deep trouble again. And the answer to the whole thing comes. Let's just draw this whole thing to a conclusion. And let me do it here in chapter 44, which I think is where it happens. This is chapter 44. The cup was found in Benjamin's sack. At this, they tore their clothes. They all loaded their donkeys, returned to the city. And when they get there, Joseph is there, and guess who speaks up? He's the leader of the boys, right? Judah speaks up. And Judah went up to him, Joseph, and said, please, my lord, let your servant speak a word to my lord. Do not be angry with your servant, though you're equal to Pharaoh himself. My lord asked his servants, do you have a father or a brother? Right? And he starts talking, and he talks, and he talks, and he talks, and he talks, and he talks. And he gets up here, and he talks, and he talks, and he talks, and he talks. And they get the impression that Joseph is there thinking, oh, that's nice, but that's not what I want to hear. Nope, that's not it. That's not the answer to my question. Nope, nope, nope. And then suddenly it comes. Finally, it comes when Joseph gets to this point when Judah gets to this point right here. Now then, please let your servant, that is me, Judah, let me remain here as my Lord's slave in place of the boy. And let the boy return with his brothers. How can I go back to my father if the boy's not with me? No, do not let me see the misery that would come upon my father. Now, do you understand what he's saying here? Now he's saying, instead of sacrifice the boy, he's saying, sacrifice me. Let me take his place. Because I don't want to make the father upset again. And I realize that what you do to the beloved son, you do to the father. Do you see the parallels going on here? They are just rich and complex and powerful. Let me take his place. No, I don't want to sacrifice the boy again. At that point, Joseph says, okay, all the Egyptians get out of here. I got to talk to these guys alone. And that's when he says, I'm your brother, little Joe. Imagine what their faces look like. Now, what is this whole thing about? Well, let me go to this. And this is maybe not a very helpful screen. I hope it is. I've tried to kind of lay out what Joseph does here, the big points. He tests and delivers his brothers to produce repentance, to avoid the same mistake, and rather accept him. Now, it's kind of convoluted, but you see the point here. And what I want you to see also is that there is an amazing parallel to another seed who's going to test and deliver during 7 years of tribulation, the nation of Israel, in the tribulation, in order to avoid the mistake of selling Jesus for 30 pieces of silver and say, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Now, not just in those areas, but in so many other countless ones we've talked about, probably 30 points of comparison you could find it, right? He's pure. He's rejected by his brothers. He is not bitter. He is forgiving. He is gracious. He blesses. He is honorable. He doesn't have a chance. The world's against him unless God is for him, right? All of these situations, we've got this story of Joseph as a picture of the one who is to come. So we had Noah and Isaac up there before. I want to put Joseph up here, and I'm not going to gray him out, right? I'm going to leave him in bright, beautiful, clear colors, because what is Moses actually doing here? Moses is talking all the way through the book, and you've seen this already, all the way through, this one clear, consistent theme that the world is wrecked, but God's promise through the seed is going to fix it. And he gets to Joseph, and listen carefully to what I'm going to say here. Do you realize the story is not really about Joseph? If this were a historical record of Joseph, I'm not trying to say that Joseph wasn't pure. Joseph was all the things we see him to be. But do you realize there are major parts of the story about Joseph he leaves out? He doesn't put any sin of Joseph in the story. Why not? Is Joseph sinless? No. Think of every other character in the Bible. Think of the biggest heroes in the rest of the Bible. And ask yourself, are they sinful? Is the Bible honest about them being sinful? David. Is David sinful? Oh, yeah. Peter. Is Peter sinful? Oh, yeah. Daniel. Is he sinful? Daniel chapter 9, a whole confession of Daniel's sin. There is no other character in the Bible like this one. Now, when I say photoshopped, I want you to understand, we're not making out Joseph to be more than he is here, but we're taking away all the negatives so that you're left with what? A picture of Joseph? And the answer is no, no, no. You're left with a whole lot more than a picture of Joseph. You see the genius, literary point of this? What Moses is saying is, look, I'm telling you about the seed who's coming, the seed, the seed, the seed, and just so you won't miss him when he comes, here's a picture of what he's going to look like. To perfectly bring this book to a conclusion and set us up for the future. Here's what he's going to look like. He's going to be pure. He's going to be rejected by his brothers, right? But he's going to be forgiving. And I want you to know this is who he is. It's a really, really powerful way to look at the at what's going on here. And when I read this kind of thing, I think, wow, I keep using the flannel graph as though it's a bad thing. I don't mean it to be a bad thing, but man, let's get way beyond it. This is so much deeper than you ever guessed, right? And we're just getting started. And this is why to me, when people start talking about, can I really trust the Bible? Is the Bible really inspired? Is it without error? Is that really, really true? Because I've heard a lot of people who say it's not true. All I want to say is just give me a semester and let's look through it and see if you think a mere human could have written this thing. This is God's word. This is God, the God who is Alpha and the Omega, who was and is to come, the guy who knew the whole story, the way the whole story would end before it even started. This is the God who wrote it out, and man, we're just blessed to be able to trace his hand as we move through history. So, with that story about Joseph then, there's one more thing I want to say to you about Genesis, the end of the book, and that's this one, Genesis 49. 49:10 is, in the King James here, is a classic statement, scepter will not depart from Judah, nor lawgiver between his feet until Shiloh comes. You say, what's going on here? Well, here's what's happening. Jacob is giving blessings to his 12 sons about the future. He's giving prophecies. And he's talking here about his son Judah. And the word Shiloh, just like Isaac or Jacob, laughter or deceiver, is a name that could be printed out as a name or could be translated. And I think here it's better translated. The NIV says this: the scepter will not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet, until he comes to whom it belongs. So Shiloh is translated, he comes to whom it belongs. What is it? What's the antecedent of it? It's the scepter, right? So what's it saying? Well, we got a couple minutes here. Work really quickly with me. Can I use your scepter? Yeah, okay. Scepter, right? Scepter of the entire world. Now, I'm going to give the scepter, think of, the scepter of Genesis 3:15 or the scepter of the kings of Israel, to the very first son of Judah who reigns over Israel, whose name would be second king name is David. Yeah, the trouble with Saul was he wasn't from the line of Judah, but David's from the line of Judah, okay? So I'm going to give this to you, David. Lots of power here, lots of power. Use it carefully. Don't use it stupidly, okay, David? I mean, you could use this to kill your best friend and sleep with his wife, but you wouldn't do that, would you? No, okay, good. All right, so hold on to that. Let's say you get old and die. It's now time for you to pass it over to your son, Solomon. And so just before you do, though, you give him a little speech based on this and say, Solomon, a lot of power here, man. You could use it for good or for evil. Don't do something stupid, right? Not that he would. Don't do something stupid like, marry 1,000 women. You wouldn't do that, would you? No. Okay, good. And so Solomon, don't do anything stupid, all right? And he dies, and we're going to give it over to his son, Rehoboam. Rehoboam, don't do anything stupid like split the kingdom, okay, buddy? Yeah. Promise me? You won't do that? Okay. And we just keep passing it over to Huzaboam there, and then Dingaboam, and then what's his boam down here, and all the other boams keep passing down. And, oh, that was so, wow. Oh, man, let me hold this up. Look at that. Isn't that amazing? You see that? Isn't that cool? I mean, it just fits so perfectly right there. What kind of a hand do we want this scepter in? You don't want this scepter in the hand of someone who's going to use it for stupid things, right? You want this scepter in the hand of someone whose heart is pure, who's only going to use it for good. So we're going to say the scepter is going to keep passing down through the line of Judah until it comes to someone where it really belongs. You can see where this is going, right? Thank you. Where is it going? What's it saying? Well, really, really important messianic promise here, because what it's saying is this: the leaders of the nation of Israel and the leader of all nations will come from the line of Judah. So Genesis 12:2 is fulfilled here. The leaders of the nation of Israel, right? The nation and their king. But then Genesis 12:3, the one who will bless all nations, will also come from this line. And now you understand why Matthew thinks that the coolest way he could start his book is with a genealogy. Well, duh. If you're listening to the Old Testament, it's what you want to know first. Right? So let's do it like this. Let's plop Genesis 49 on top of Genesis 15. And if that doesn't make sense to you, maybe this one will. Let's use this figure and get all the way down here to Judah. Genesis 3, he will come from the line of Seth. Genesis 12 from Abraham, and now Genesis 49 from Judah. Incredibly coherent message.